Hi, Joe Cerrone.
And Al Rosen.
Welcome to our weekly Zoom classroom meeting for CAD 107, Introduction to 3D Printing. Lab number 6, the memo block holder has been released, and you're welcome to use AutoCAD or SolidWorks, or if you have something else that you would like to try, that's quite all right. We are starting to brand or to work with text more on these models. So as we work on these, we're doing a little bit of comparison of how SolidWorks, AutoCAD, and 3D Builder are used to emboss. And we're also looking at the differences, whether we extrude the text or we subtract it, positive versus negative geometry as it's 3D printed. So last week we created a base with base mode, and we went through and we printed these bases. We have videos for those. We're having a little issues with the spiralized outer contour and the wall thickness. So if you have made a print and it did not come out like you were hoping it would, join the club. That happens quite a bit. And we're going to research ways to be able to troubleshoot some of those techniques. One of the techniques that we'll look at today is how to calibrate and to be able to check the levelness of the print bed.
Why do you want to do that, Joe?
Well, if the prints are failing, there could be a number of different reasons. One of the reasons could be that the bed of the print is not perfectly horizontal. And when we're working with these really fine slices, that error expands or gets bigger as the part volume grows.
Oh, okay.
So the other things we're going to look at too is with the first layer build, there are some adjustments to that. We're going to look at how we can do that. So our next project will be this memo block holder, and we have a good video for that. If we go through and we play that, I'll show you where it's at. I'm going to leave the sound off. No YouTube. Make this bigger. So we did this last year. I went through and posted this on YouTube. You can download the file. I tried to download it with Word and it's just slower. We'll be working in metric units. So if you're modeling this from the start, use the metric title block. It is kind of nice as we look at some of the builds for these. This is a nice reliable part. So we'll make the base of it 88 millimeters by 88. We've got this radius right here, 5 millimeter radius. We'll look at some of the modeling techniques. And then we can download the CAD file and also look at the modeling process. And so as I modeled it, I like to kind of do it step by step and show how to do that. And so the idea is that you can see how the build was made. AutoCAD is an older software, and so when I use SolidWorks, I'll just go through the feature tree and just use what they call the Wayback Bar. And then there's a video here which demonstrates how to model this in AutoCAD. And then we look at the curriculum as well. And so we'll look at the work within the slicer, orientation of the parts to minimize or get the best build as we look at that. And so we enable the layer mode to be able to view the slicing software. And then I talked briefly in this video about wireless print cloud. This Simplify 3D seems to be like the next level software for controlling your 3D printer. And then make sure that you put the assignments in the assignment folders where they're appropriate. And also at the end of the chapters, complete the review questions. Back to the main splash page. Here's our project file. And again, I need to download this because it's a Word file. D2L doesn't do the greatest job of that. We'll open that. Of course, I've probably got so many views open now. It's okay. So here's our memo block holder. And you don't have to put Oakton College on it. You can put whatever you'd like on it. I like that they have this generic modeling approach. And as I worked with these other schools in Europe, it's working really well because they're all on different CAD softwares. And by going with like a geometry-based construction technique, you can apply the principles to any CAD software. If we look at the next assignment, we have released it. I'm going to view this as a student. Under content. So we have our memo block holder, and there's a tutor file, which is basically AutoCAD file. And then if we look at the next project down the line, we'll look at the project 6. And it's good that I'm looking at it as a student. Here's a project 7, excuse me. Got a little bit of jet lag. And so we have this small box. And I have the boxes created. Let's see where I have that. And we will be looking at, I'm going to stop sharing. And I have the camera focused in on the machine, but we'll also be looking at creating just these small boxes. And we're going to be using something called horizontal expansion to be able to get these dual color applications, where we're going to use horizontal expansion to actually put a negative value. So if it's kind of like a puzzle, and then we want these tops to kind of snap on. And this is just a small cube. I printed it. I try to print things in a couple of hours, but there's no problem if we want to go to a 5 hour to a 7 hour build. After that, I think we start to push the limitations of the machine. Back to my screen sharing. So the next project will be this small box. I'm going to double check the classroom to make sure I'm not leaving anybody out. We're good. And then as we go through and we start to work with these, we're going to start to work with some of these other settings as far as being able to use single head extruder nozzles and horizontal expansion, because it's just a really good technique, provides multicolor options, and it's useful. All right, so I've got the wrong splash page there. This will be the CAD file. If once you download the CAD file, let's see if I can manage my windows here. Here it is. This is what it will look like. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with this geometry. And the geometry is right there within the dimensions of the textbook. Remember, with CAD, you can go through and you can measure things like distance And so I'm going to just go and hover, acquire that point, and I can see that it's 88 millimeters. And so you create the geometry. Now you're welcome to make some modifications to it. Keep the inside diameter the same. Remember that it's not a bad idea to get a vernier gauge or a caliper to be able to measure. So if you go and you have some different memo pad sizes, and I got to tell you, memo pads are great. I mean, I put a memo pad on my desk and 3M sticker pads, and you will use it. And so they make great gifts as well. I'm at a tendency where when I visit my care physicians, I will give them one. We do have a number of people that are within the community that come in here. And so some of the doctors over in the North Shore Hospital system will work in our labs, welding and CAD and a number of other areas. As we look at the way this was modeled, okay, we start with an extrusion on that. And then radius the corners. And then we set a user coordinate system on the top of it, created the geometry on the top. And then we cut that with the extrusion and a subtraction Boolean operation. And then we did the same thing again with the inner space. The reason you do the inner space is so that you can get the memo pads out if they get stuck. And then we place the text on it. And what I'm finding is that profiled text or pressed or extruded text is a little easier to read than subtracted text. Although on this model, I subtracted it. And remember, when we're doing those subtractions, what we're doing is, if I were to change my modeling space over to 3D modeling, and we're using these user coordinate systems, at least I like to do it old school. Al can talk me through some of the newer ways. And so we put the X, Y plane on the part. Now it does have dynamic abilities, but this always works for me. And so I'm going to work at that. So I'll make that perpendicular to it. And then if I take a view to it, if I go to view or zoom, and then I type P for plan, apparently not. We'll just go into a plan view. PLAN, enter, enter. There it goes. We can use some of these bonus tools. Remember, you have to convert the text over. And so if I go to these express tools, we can use these modified text tools to explode the text and then be able to press pull that or to extrude it. And so if we work with this, typically I'll make that in wireframe so that I can see that. And then I will go through and let's try extruding this one the other way. Shift middle mouse wheel and we'll pull that out. Let's go with 0.05 in our extrusion. Not a lot, very little, but just enough to 3D print that. And so as we start to work with these different models, you're welcome to take it to that level. Next week, we'll be looking at something called horizontal expansion so that we can print the letters in red with a single extruder 3D printer, and then to be able to have them so that they fit. Because if you don't have a tolerance or some clearance, then you wind up doing a lot of post-processing. So that's the memo pad assignment. And these are the files that are required for that. Here's the tutor file. We were just walking through that on AutoCAD. You're welcome to use SolidWorks. And then again, we want you to brand those files. And so if I come in here and I say, well, let's take it at this point right here, and I want to export that. And we'll export that as another file format, STL. I'm going to put it on my desktop, 2021 CAD 107. And we'll just modify the name a little bit. Select the file, create the STL file, and then we'll use 3D Builder to open that STL file. And then as we look at that, I can import the model, and then I can select the model. And when you select the model, you'll get this little navigation bar. These are your coordinates. And this is the move coordinate to rotate and scale. We're going to rotate it. And so we can grab the part and rotate it. Notice that the roll numbers update. So we rolled that 90 degrees right here. And then we can just click off the part. And then I can go to the insert. Excuse me, we'll go to the edit and the emboss function. And then we can go and put our name on it. And so we can say, I think what I'll do is I'm going to start to put the room numbers on this. And so P130, let's just say room P130. And when I hit enter, it should update that. You can then work with the text within that. And so if you select the text, you can then scale it. And then you can select over to move. And then you can actually move that text around on the part. And then we'll green check mark that. So your parts should have some embossing or some lettering in there that indicates it's yours, so that as we start to put these projects out on the tabletop. And then lastly, let's try to bring that into the slicer here. Let's go back to 3D Builder. So once I have edited this and changed it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it. We're going to save it as this 3MF format. I'm going to put it in my CAD 107. Sure, save it. And then we're going to go back to our slicing software. We're going to open that. And then we can orientate that on the build plate. And so we'll select that with the move icon, then we can just place it on the center of the plate. And we can see that our embossing is working on there. We can also then go through and take a look at the layers. And so we can go through. Now I'm not getting any layers on here because I have to prepare it. And we've been talking about some of the quality applications. So let's prepare that. And so here I can see, oh, what's going on here? It's going to print super fast, but it's printing it with spiralized outer contour on from our vase mode project. So if I go into special modes and uncheck that and then prepare it, you can see now it's better. And then we can also look at our build qualities. And so we can start to work with these, and we're looking at the different build qualities that we can get. Let's go with a high quality 0.1 millimeter, and we'll prepare that. It's a pretty high build time, 5 hours and 25 minutes. Let's try a medium quality and prepare that. Much better, 2 hours, 10 minutes. And you can see that there's some support material that's being generated. And you can also see that we're working with the build plate adhesion, and we'll talk about that after this Zoom weekly meeting. But when we look at the build plate adhesion, we want to make sure that that part stays attached to the build plate. And so we'll be looking at build plate adhesion issues like working with a brim. And as we work on these, those are some of the fails that we are getting on the machines. What is happening and how can we fix those things? All right, so we're looking at build quality, how thick the layers are, build plate adhesion, and I also want to take a look at infill patterns. And so as we work with these different infill patterns, depending on if we're using transparent or semi-transparent materials, you can get some really cool effects. And so if we look at our infill, here's my infill and the density. This is another way that you can shave time off of the build process. And so I got this down to a 2-hour build, and this has a zigzag infill pattern. Let's look at concentric, and then we'll reslice that. And then we'll view the build. And so if we start working with some semi-transparent materials, everybody's into LED lighting now. You can backlight this if you like. I had worked with some laser engraved crystal that, and you can buy it on eBay, and you can then make these holograms, and you have to light them. And so the base that I have needs to be repaired because my LED light doesn't properly work. And this would be an application that you could do that. And by using the infill patterns, you can also get some effects with sort of a semi-transparent, just some really neat effects as we start to work with the different builds and get more familiar with the slicer. Okay. So that's our weekly Zoom classroom meeting. All the material you need is here to create the files. You're welcome to use AutoCAD or SolidWorks or whatever CAD software that you'd like. Be sure to brand them and put them into the assignments folder, and we'll continue to print those for you so you can come and pick those up. With that, I'm going to stop the recording, and then we're going to go to the next part, which is how to level the build plate. Al, is there anything else we need to cover?
No, I think it was fantastic.
All right, terrific. I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll create another one.